I was 7, first time sleep paralysis. I woke up in my bed with a figure in the corner. It started to move towards me. There were no distinct features. It got to my feet, and I felt the weight of it. I was terrified. Eventually, I blacked out and had one of the most intense dreams that I can recall, as if this was last night. I was in a pure white room walking between long shelves of white. Each shelf had books all the way to the ceiling. Each book was white and there were no labels. As I walked down an aisle, I felt I was being pulled towards the end of it by something sinister, but I couldn't turn my head towards the end of the aisle. All I could do was watch the books as I passed them. Eventually, though, I got to the end and finally turned to a raised area with steps leading to a throne. It was pure white, like the rest of the room. And a foot above the throne was a black sphere. In that moment, I could feel its thoughts. It told me that it wanted me to suffer. It wanted to kill my family while I watched. It was pure hatred. At that moment, I woke up, and this thing was on my legs. I flipped out and started screaming, "Mom!" I was able to move again. My mom ran into the room and turned the lights on. She calmed me down and I laid back down to sleep. Well, about 30 seconds later, she ran into the room freaking out. She was highly religious at that point and started to pray out loud, saying, "In the name of Jesus, get out." She woke up my brother, who somehow slept through the whole ordeal. And now we are both freaking out crying. Well, years pass, and I didn't really think about it until a TV show came on, talking about sleep paralysis. My mom and I got to talking and I said, "Hey, remember that one night? What happened?" Well, she said I was too young at the time and didn't want to scare me. She recapped her version of the story, how she ran into the room to hear me screaming. She went back to her room, and my stepfather was awake and asked if everything was okay. She said it was just a bad dream. He said, "That's weird. I've been awake for a while and I heard a woman, clear as day, talking in that room." He said she was repeating herself over and over, saying in a very calm voice, "You need to call out to your mother. You need to call out to her right away. Call out to her." I don't remember that at all. I have no recollection of a voice. This event has traumatized me more than I can say. I hope nobody ever has to go through what I did that night. I've struggled with sleep paralysis my entire life, but one story in particular stands out amongst the rest. My husband left early one morning on a business trip, probably around 6 a.m. He would be gone for a week, and we had only been married for about 6 months so far, so he made sure to wake me up and say goodbye, since this was the first time we'd been away from each other for an extended period of time since we'd been married. Needless to say, I was a bit anxious about being alone in a house for a week. I've never lived alone before, and so this was a new experience for me. He kissed me on the cheek, turned out the lights, and closed the bedroom door before he left. I was already starting to fall back asleep when I heard him grab his keys and walk out the front door, locking it behind him. For the next few minutes, I was in and out of sleep, which is typical of me before a sleep paralysis episode. I'd fall asleep for 1 second, and suddenly wake up and repeat over and over again. Finally, I felt real sleep come over me. My consciousness slipped away, my body felt heavy, and my breathing deepened. But instead of going over the edge into deep sleep, my mind woke up, and my body didn't. For some people, opening your eyes and looking around is possible during sleep paralysis. For me, I can't so much as strain in an attempt to move. My body is distant, and I typically feel like I'm hovering a foot above my actual body. My eyelids remained closed, and my body was distant. I couldn't even change my breathing. I'm completely paralyzed and have no control over my body. So I knew I just had to wait it out. I remained perfectly still despite my best efforts, and so I gave up and just accepted my fate of staying aware in my frozen body until my mind caught up and I drifted back to sleep. That was when I heard the front door unlock and then open. Strange, but my husband left not too long ago. Maybe he forgot something. Good. Maybe he will shake me and wake me up from this sleep paralysis hell. I won't have to wait it out alone and in terror. I could hear the sound of booted feet walking directly towards my bedroom door. I don't remember my husband's feet sounding quite so loud and heavy, but maybe I wasn't paying attention before. The bedroom door creaks open, I can hear the heavy footfalls on the carpet, approaching my bed. I know now it's not my husband, because the breathing is too heavy and deep. He would have announced his presence to me long before entering the room, as he knows I'm incredibly skittish, especially when I'm sleeping. He wouldn't want to scare me. This individual was trying not to wake me. I'm suddenly very aware of the stupidity of hiding the spare key to the front door under the mat. I can't move. I can't open my eyes. I can't scream. I can feel his large hands now pressed against the end of my bed. He's tall. Very tall. His hands are at the bottom of the bed, and yet I can feel his breath on my face. It reeks of death. He's now crawling onto the bed on his hands and knees. I can feel my body shift and move as his massive weight shifts the mattress beneath us both. I can't move. His face is directly over mine now. His breath is so warm and reeking. He's breathing heavily. He sounds excited. My body is trembling now, even though I can't even so much as open one eye to see who is terrorizing me. My breathing has involuntarily picked up as the fear sets in. He must know I'm awake now. His breathing hitches as he knows he must act quickly before I start to struggle. He doesn't know I'm completely paralyzed. Quickly, I can feel his weight shift to one side as his hand moves away from the side of my head. He's rummaging around in his pocket from the sound of things. A sharp pain suddenly erupts from my left arm as... What is that? A needle. He put a needle in my arm. He's drugged me with something. I can feel the warm sting of whatever he injected me with spreading through my veins. He lets out a dark chuckle as my consciousness slips away. Things are warm and fuzzy, and the last thing I remember is feeling his weight shifting back over me and his breath getting closer and closer to my face. I woke up hours later in an absolute panic. Still in my own bed, I called the police and my husband. They searched the entire house with no signs of anyone at all. To this day, I have no clue what or who that was. We moved out not too long after that. I rarely get sleep paralysis nowadays. My sleep paralysis started when I was going to college in 2019. It was a religious school. The school, the dorms, and the church were all in the same compound. I shared the dorm room with 11 other girls, and every night at 9 p.m. we would gather in a circle to have our evening prayer. One night, I was feeling super lazy and didn't want to join in the prayer, so I pretended to be asleep in my bunk bed on my back, while the others gathered in a circle on the side. One of them led the prayer, and the moment she said the opening of the prayer, "Dear God in heaven," I felt my whole body go numb. It was like a feeling of falling, but everything was so cloudy and I couldn't move. I knew that they were still praying because I could hear them, but it was just mumbling through all the cloudiness. I tried to scream, but nothing was coming out. They finished their prayer, but it was only when my friend sat on my bed that she noticed I looked like I was struggling. She yelled my name and started shaking me until I woke up out of it. None of us could sleep that night. Ever since that night, my sleep paralysis happened more often, especially when I slept on my back. It happens so often that I've learned to sense when I'm about to fall into it. There is a certain sound that I hear, almost like a low bass drum. So when I hear it, I fight to stay awake. When I fall into it, I am fully aware and I just try to focus on waking up. I usually have my eyes shut tightly, and I scream a prayer countless times, and that seemed to work. I know that I'm in a sleep paralysis because when I open my eyes, it's as if I am in the same room, but there's just something a bit off. It feels like entering a different realm, but something evil is present. One night I was sleeping next to my husband. I opened my eyes and it was the same room, but it looked a bit darker than usual. The walls were a bit torn around the edges. I felt like something was watching me, so I kept nudging my husband to wake up, but he wasn't moving. I shook him, but nothing. That's when I was like, shit, it's happening again. My husband turned to look at me. He went on top of me and started choking me. I kept my eyes closed because I was so afraid to find out what it looked like. But for the first time I opened them, I could see that it was my husband, but when I stared even more, his figure was changing into a female form that just looked pure evil. I kept screaming, but nothing was coming out. I tried to pray, and the female demon just laughed and said, "That's not going to help you." I kept trying until I finally woke up. I never sleep on my back anymore. My sister is aware of all my sleep paralysis encounters. She believes that something evil followed me at the religious school. I'm not sure how true this is, but I found out that years ago, that land was part of the World War in Manila. So there were a lot of dead, buried bodies in the grounds of our compound.